what is represented on this stage right now. This is, if you were a sci-fi or action or movie fan at all, these guys paved the way, is what I would say, for everything that I love and everything fantasy. I mean, if we went through, one of you guys was in Kroll, right? Was you were in Kroll, which, was it you?
Me?
Yeah. Krull is like one of my favorite sci-fi things. We have puppeteers, we have stuntmen, we have 2 Boba Fetts up here.
Three.
Just three Boba Fetts. Man, this is so great. So I want you guys to have as many opportunities to have questions as possible while we're waiting on Hugh, because I actually want to hear a good story from Hugh as well. But just to start it off, guys, what I want to know, and any one of you guys can answer, is when you were getting into the business, if we can go far back as you want, did you know that the things that you were doing then were going to be what they are now?
As far as I'm concerned, no.
No.
No, I had no idea. But it's the same with every film you do. Like, sometimes they're a success and sometimes they're not. I've done movies that I thought were going to be box office movies, and they weren't, you know. But the other way around happened as well, which was one of the things that happened with Star Wars, with the first one. Nobody thought when they were making it that it was going to be what it was. In fact, the English crew, they were all saying, like, these guys don't know what they're doing, you know, just take the money and run. And that was it. And then when Star Wars came out, obviously Lucas knew what he was doing, but nobody on set realized what he was doing and what he was up to. And well, now we know that's one of the franchises that is still like popular, even with the new generation now. Yeah. But we didn't know. We had no idea. Robert will know that.
Yeah, how about you guys, especially on Star Wars? Did you feel like this was going to be bigger than it was?
When we made the film, I kind of knew it would be good, but I never expected it to be anything like it was, because it was a phenomenon, and suddenly everybody wanted to go and see Star Wars. And I was thrilled because, you know, I work in movies, that's my job. And now I made a mega movie that everybody wanted to see. And for that, I am deeply grateful. I can't believe I'm back here in this hall with all of you. All these years later, having made that movie and seeing it regenerated in younger and younger generations. Thank you all for coming.
Well, I think to pick up on what Robert said, what was so exceptional about Star Wars was the leadership of which he was a part of. They really set a really high bar for looking after their people. And I had never found a film on all the films I've done that had quite the morale that Star Wars was there. And you have to put that on folks like George and Gary Kurtz, who's forgotten and should not be, because Gary's spirit was very much in the film. And then all the way from there right down to the tea lady. I always like to say the tea lady was the happiest person on the set, really cheering everybody up. But Dave Tomlin, who was the first assistant, and then Steve Lanning and Roy Button, all of them looked after their people, and there was a great loyalty there. So in many respects, I like to say that the force is real, because it carries on through to today, where we are right now, I think. It was just a great bunch of people. We had great examples like Robert and Dave Tomlin and George Lucas and others. They looked after us. It showed.
Mr. Bies, did you have a similar experience?
Well, I'm of a different era, because I came along when for the prequels and that. So for me, Star Wars was already established. As a matter of fact, it's the reason I got into the film business. So you know, working you know, being up here with these guys is really cool to me. I mean, as a fan. So I'm like the late bloomer to this whole thing. But but I echo. I mean, even you know, with George and the team that we worked on the prequels, it was a great experience.
And then, Mr. Spight, I have a question for you. Did I read right that was it Return of the Jedi that your name was spelled wrong and you weren't credited for it at first?
Yes. We were sitting in the theater watching the preview, the launch of the film, and then at the end when the credits go up, waiting for my name to pop up, and instead of Hugh Spight, it said Hugh Spirit. Oh well, there's fame out of the door. Well, never mind.
It made you famous, though.
So, and then about 4 years after doing the film, I left the country to go to Hamburg in Germany to play a lead in a musical for a couple of months because I wanted to do a lead part. And then I discovered that Hamburg is a massive media city, and I'm bilingual German, and they were very interested, calling the theatre, you've got an English actor, we need an English voice for this dubbing, we need an English this. So I thought, well, what do I do? Do I go back to England and be a small fish in a big sea, or what do I do? So I gave it 2 weeks and said, okay, God, if you want me here, you show me, and he did. And I spent 15 years in Hamburg, came back to England, didn't know anything about Star Wars, knew nothing about this generational fan base, not a thing. And I'd been back in England 7 years, and I had a letter from somebody who had traced me through the electoral roll when he had found out what my real name was. And he asked me if he could meet me, and he said, do you know what people all over the world are looking for you? And I went, what? And so we met up, and he became a good friend, and then this all opened up, and here we are.
Well done.
Hugh Spirit.
And so then I noticed that some of you guys have a lot of, outside of Star Wars, other crossovers. I saw Superman, Cutthroat Island, a couple other films. So are you guys all friends throughout the business over the years, or how often have you worked together with each other?
Well, me and John, my first movie ever was A Bridge Too Far. It's a classic war movie. And John was on it as an actor, and I was on it as a stuntman. So that's where we met first. And then, obviously, Robert I met on Return of the Jedi, but we also worked together on 2 of the Indiana Jones movies. And, you know, you keep on bumping into each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a couple of years, sometimes it takes like a week, and you're back together again. I consider our business like a family business. Yeah. That's the way I look at it.
Would you say it's like that today for people getting into it just now? Do you feel like they have the same camaraderie that you guys would have?
I think it's a little bit different nowadays. It's more, nowadays movie making is more about money. In my time, it was more about having a good time and make some money at the same time.
You guys all agree with that?
That's the way I looked at it. Nowadays, it's not like that anymore.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, when Dickey and I got into the business, movie making, and that was 1976, there still was the holdover of the 60s. And, you know, it was an alternative way of being, you know, instead of working on an assembly line or in an office with a coat and tie. In many ways, I have to say, and I'm not trying to trivialize the experience, you know, it was an extension of my hippiedom, which I like to see for you all, because I feel that the pop festivals that I kind of participated in as an audience and as a fellow traveler, the same kind of spirit is here at the Comic-Cons.
Yes.
And you all are much more creative than we were, because you scratch anybody that's into cosplay. You know, they're doing their own T-shirts or costumes or painting or making jewelry or whatever. So the creativity that you all have here is just fantastic. I would say that the spirit, though, which you probably weren't thinking of. You were thinking of actors. Definitely, I have been on panels and been with the Star Wars family, and the folks that I am tremendously impressed with their spirit and their loyalty to each other are the folks that are doing creature effects.
Ooh, yeah.
So you've got Brian Herring, who does BB-8, and Arnold, I can't remember his first name, but there's a bunch of them, Paul Casey, that are really kind of a team that sort of have taken off from, the Muppets. And so you've got this group that have some stage experience, TV, and film, that are at the core of the creature effects in Star Wars. They're all pretty much based in the London area. But they're real tight, and it's very exciting to me. I think you're going to see those folks move on, in the decades ahead, and be as legendary as Jim Henson and his people.
Yeah. I have one more question, then I'll open it up for you guys. So if you guys want to go ahead and start forming a line, you totally can, to ask a question. But Mr. Beers was telling me that you sort of fell into this whole thing on accident, right? Like it just kind of happened. Which if you want to expound on that for a second, I'd love to hear how you just sort of fell into being this.
I fell into the industry, literally, yes. I had a job, well-paying job, but I hated every single minute of it. And I knew where I was going to go from that day on till my 65th birthday, which would then be my retire time. And it didn't appeal to me. I didn't like it. The only thing good about it was the money. So one day I decided I'm going to quit my job now, and I'm going to jump from one job into the other until I find something that I really like. And one day I picked up the phone and somebody said there's an audition going on in this town back in the Netherlands, and it's for what they called special extras. And I went to the audition, and I met the stunt coordinator and a bunch of the stunt guys, and the stunt coordinator was Alf Joint, and he liked me, and he gave me a job. Actually, that day he said to me, I will give you a call. And I went like, yeah, I've heard that before, like, no problem, I'll take it. And literally, actually he called me like a week later, and he said, can you come in for a fitting? And I said, yes, but I didn't know what a fitting was. So he said, come over to where we are, and you have to come in for a fitting. And okay, so I went there, and then I went to this address that they gave me, and I walked into this huge warehouse, and it was full of wardrobe, like American soldiers' costumes, German soldier costumes. And then I meet this guy, and he said, okay, take your clothes off and try this on. And that was fitting. The fitting was for an outfit, and the outfit was an American soldier, and I was doubling for a Canadian actor. His name was Nicholas Gamble. It was actually that job. John also auditioned for that part in the movie, yeah. But he didn't get it. The other guy got it. So I'm doubling for this guy, and my first 2 weeks' work on that movie was sitting in a Jeep, in an old Willys Jeep, being a dead body with blood running down my head. And the Jeep was driven by James Caan, and he was jumping ramps, hitting trees, and going through a forest, and I'm just sitting there being dead. That was it. And the 2-week contract was over, and then the stunt coordinator, Alf Joint, he said, it looks like you like our industry, because in between filming, I was asking everybody what they were doing, because I had no clue. I didn't know what the film industry was all about. And so he saw that I was interested in it, and then he came to me and he said, would you be available for the next 6 months on call? And I said, of course I will be, and that was it. That's how
way better than the 9 to 5, huh?
And he said, it won't be every day, but I will call you when needed. And I ended up being on that movie every single day.
Nice.
And I learned in 6 months like a war movie is the best movie to start on, because there's a lot of stunts on it, like vehicle stunts, fights, explosions, gun battles, you name it. It's all it all happens in a war movie. So I was extremely lucky to pick up the phone that particular day and hear about this audition for special extras.
Yeah. How about you guys? How did you get into doing this originally? Go ahead.
I come from the dance background. I was a ballet dancer. And hence an organization put an advertisement in the Stage, which is a theatrical newspaper in England. Dancers, gymnasts, acrobats, circus performers, mime artists. So I thought, hey, I'll go for that, see what's going for an up-and-coming feature film. And it was a 2-week audition. And the second week, I actually was dancing, and I had to go to Portugal. And I went to Jean-Pierre Amiel, who was leading that, and I said, I'm sorry, Jean-Pierre is a French mime artist. I said, I can't do the second week. And he said, you want this job? I said, yes. He said, okay. So anyway, that's how I came into that. So I say to people, I was a dancer, and I said, as a dancer, you're as good as your last audition. And there's no golden handshake. There's not even a pension. But when I come to these events now, after all these years of, with the Muppets and then into Star Wars and various other things, I just like to say thank you, because this is payback time. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Yeah, I'd love to hear.
So I grew up in Chicago, and when I was 6 years old, my cousin, a much older cousin, tried to scare me by showing me Frankenstein, the 1931 Frankenstein on TV, and instead it did the opposite. It's like, how do they make that guy look like that? So that's what interested me in filmmaking from 6 years old. And so I started devouring, Planet of the Apes came out, and King Kong, and all the fantasy films, and Star Wars hit. And the same year Star Wars hit, I got my driver's license. I got my first job, which was at an amusement park. And at that amusement park, they were filming a Brian De Palma movie called The Fury. And in that movie, an effects guy called A.D. Flowers, who worked on the original Wizard of Oz, was a mechanical effects guy, and he put a ride through a window. And I this is it. I got to do this, So from that point on, it was just try to figure out how to get from Chicago to into the film business. So I did a lot of theater in Chicago. I amassed a portfolio, and then I heard that a company called Chris Walas Incorporated was hiring, and Chris Walas had done the melting heads for Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that the dragon from Dragon Slayer, or the puppet dragon from Dragon Slayer, and he formed his own company and did Gremlins, and they were working on a movie called The Fly with David Cronenberg and Jeff Goldblum. So I got a job on that, and that happened to be down the street from ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, and I made the connections there, and one thing led to another. It's actually just being in the right place at the right time for me.
What did you do with The Fly? Because that scene is, famous, man. That's
Which scene? There's all a bunch of
so
scenes
I was
that
picturing
I worked on
him
that got cut
transforming into the Fly, right? That's
out.
like
Yeah,
the
it
scene.
was all the creature effects
Yeah.
that I worked on. But the big thing that you see on the screen was, again, with a small team of people. We worked on the big thing that he turns into at the end, which was a big puppet. But there was a lot of smaller rigs that we had made where his legs, cracked open and his face split. And there's scenes cut out, that a lot of scenes that I worked on got cut out because they were deemed either irrelevant to the storyline or made the story too long, or they were just gross, actually. And, the movie's pretty gross anyway, but there was even more grosser stuff in it. So yeah, so it was that stuff. There's a whole stop motion sequence at the end of the movie that got cut, where Gina Davis is dreaming of the baby she would have had. It's really weird. And there's a branch and a cocoon, and the cocoon splits open, and these beautiful butterfly wings unfold, and it's a baby with butterfly wings, and it climbs up to the top of the branch and jumps off and flies off into the moon or something. I don't know.
Sunset.
Yeah, sunset. And we did it all stop motion, and we did it with John Berg. John Berg was the lead animator on it, and John did well, he worked on the Cantina creatures in Star Wars. He also worked on the chess set that in Star Wars, and then he also did the Walkers with Phil Tippett. So I got to meet John, became lifelong friends with John, and yeah, that was one of the many things I worked on. And then one job led to another, and then I made the connection into ILM and got the job in 1987 to operate R2-D2 for a bunch of Japanese commercials, and then that led to working for Lucasfilm. So.
I have a question about practical effects, but I want you guys, if you want, you got to start lining up with this mic, and you can ask whatever questions you want. If you don't have a question, I can give you a question, but if not, I'm going to keep going because I'm having fun, but don't feel afraid. But before I quick, say there. Practical effects, are they, right now, do you feel like they're, because I love movies with practical effects over CGI. I think CGI was really cool for me when I was in high school, and now I'm like, I'd rather see that. And I know a couple of you guys can speak to puppeteering, to building things, but do you feel like that craft is lost, or do you feel like it's coming back, or where do you feel like that art form is right now in films?
It never left. There's always practical effects because things have to explode, and there's stunts and all sorts of stuff. So the practical effects are always there. What kind of happened was with the introduction in Jurassic Park and the huge impact that had with special effects. And if you haven't, I urge you to watch the ILM documentary that's on Disney Plus. It's a great documentary. But unfortunately, what they did when they hit the Jurassic Park era, they just glossed over the next 20 years of ILM history. And they one of the people in the documentary said, yeah, and the model shop packed up and went home. And that's absolutely not true. We were the busiest at ILM from 1993 until 2004 when they sold the model shop. We were the busiest that we had ever been. We had over 100 people working on the movie. We had more models in the prequels, in one of the prequels, than they did in the original 3 films.
Really? I didn't know that.
So it became a marketing tool, and that's all it is right now. It's like, oh yeah, it was really amusing to us when we were doing episode 1. They were talking about the all-digital world of Theed. Theed was a model. Theed was all a model. There was digital extensions, but it was a model set with live action sets and that sort of thing. So it became, because ILM and Lucasfilm was trying to push the fact that they were doing all this digital stuff, that became a marketing tool. And they were saying all about digital this, digital that, digital. And so it became, CG kind of became the catchword of the day. And then when they went back to Force Awakens, they were saying, oh, we're doing all this practical stuff. Well, the practical stuff never went away. They had continued to do that practical stuff. So it's marketing. It's really marketing. So they're there. They're doing amazing stuff on the Marvel and the Star Wars series now with the volume. That's an amazing thing, and that's essentially practical because it's right there. It's right
Would it be the same with puppeteering?
And again, puppeteering never really went away either. I mean, we thought that was the first one to go away, and it kind of did in makeup effects and stuff like that. But then that started coming back.
I just think of Dark Crystal. That's
right. Yeah, I mean, Dark Crystal was great with all that. But then there was a lot of puppet stuff on episode 1, 2, and 3, and there continued to be, and then even the new films as well. So that's, if anything, that kind of went away and then had a resurgence was the puppet stuff. But the one thing that actually kind of completely did go away was model making, spaceships and that sort of thing.
Well, let you guys ask. Go ahead.
Have you gotten to keep any props from movies you worked on?
You guys got to keep any of the props from any movie that you've worked on?
We're not supposed to talk about that.
One from everyone. We won't tell. It's Cincinnati. No one knows we're here. I'd love to hear one.
Sorry? Got any props?
That you've taken.
Keep anything from any of the
Oh, I wish I had.
We already sold one of you
Worth
there.
a fortune now, but hey, I wish I had.
I did.
You know,
I did.
but it
Can't
was
tell
great
you what,
to
but
work on,
I did.
on those movies.
I tried to keep
Star Wars
I've
was
tried
a
to keep
phenomenon.
something from every movie.
It opened and suddenly, wow,
Yeah.
everybody was talking about it. And I went, gosh, because I've been in the movie business all my life, but I never worked on a movie like Star Wars. nor seen the result of what happened when it opened. So, hey, there's a first time for everything. This was my first time, if you like, and I really am grateful to have had the opportunity to work on that film and to meet all these wonderful guys and you lot, because you're part of it, and come back all these years later. You know, I was quite a young man when we made those movies. Look at me now. I'm 84 years old. And twice as ugly. Anyway, you know what I mean. So thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy the future of special effects as they continue to evolve, as they will, with these guys, because they are the people who do it. I don't. I'm a producer. I don't do anything. Except
You get the money, though. That's where that's what happens.
We could have
Mr.
done it
Morton, how about
without
you? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm hoping to jump the queue here, so bear with me, because you didn't have a chance to tell your story about how you got involved in Star Wars, and
Oh, yeah,
I
let's hear
never
it.
heard that.
well, yes. It was a strange one because I met George Lucas. Oh, I beg your pardon, it was Gary Kurtz, actually. When I was doing some, regular movie work, and we were doing special effects and things like that, and I was filming them because I was a film producer. I was not a special effects guy. I was not, one of those. I was one of those, And when the time come that George Lucas came to make Star Wars, he remembered me, contacted me, and that's how I began, if you like, in special effects that turned into a phenomenon, and I was very fortunate to have been chosen as a result of my work. So thank you all for that.
Did you work on 2001 with Kubrick?
I did. I worked with Stanley Kubrick on 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was, the effects we used on that were quite primitive compared to what we were later using on Star Wars, but it was a great movie. And I still appreciate that. And I appreciate Stanley Kubrick and what he did and what he did for me. Because in a sense, he recommended me to George Lucas. And as a result of that, Gary Kurtz and the others, and I got involved in effects work, which I hadn't done. I was a regular filmmaker. I was a regular run-of-the-mill, do it as you're taught to do it. But hey, I got lucky. Why do you think I'm sitting here?
But to answer your question, sir, security is very, very tight on a film set. And you put your job in jeopardy if you step outside.
Wow, I actually didn't know
that
that was the
security.
truth.
Oh, yes, it's very, very tight.
Except for Mr. Beers, who's taken something from everyone.
With cameras. I mean, there's, you have to remember that people have invested millions into these films, and secrecy, they don't want things leaking out to the public ahead of time, because it will lose the surprise effect. It will also jeopardize the film production itself. So no, it is quite tight on that, understandable.
And it's getting worse.
Yes. Thank you, Hugh.
I think the internet ruins us
made a
because you
point
hear
there.
the stories of like, oh, they kept the horses, they kept this, but yeah, that's a good reality check. I like that.
Nowadays, but before you even can walk in the office first time, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. That's the first thing they put in front of you, and that never was in the old days. But nowadays, that's the first thing you see, non-disclosure agreement and don't dare to say anything about what's going on or make a picture on set, like.
Ooh, yeah.
Among the many jobs I've had is one of the jobs I was the Lucasfilm archivist for 7 years. So I took care of all the props and costumes and stuff that used to be that from the original films and Raiders and all that sort of thing.
Very
So they're
important, that.
yeah,
The
they're
archives, yes.
yeah, it's like the crown jewels of the of Lucasfilm. So there were a lot of duplicates of things but things did go missing. There were things that like Obi-Wan's lightsaber from the original film no one knows what happened to that.
Oh,
And then all of a sudden something will pop up on auction. It's like, oh, so-and-so had it in their garage.
That's fun. That's super fun. Man, thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Let's go next. So curious.
It's Django.
What's your favorite memory from filming the movies?
What's your favorite experience with
Memory.
Of working Star Wars?
memory of working with Star Wars?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a very difficult question because it's filled with memory, and because the films were so successful and they produced such a lot of merchandising, all of it comes alive every time I see something in a shop window. So my real gratitude to Star Wars lies in the fact that I had the opportunity to work on it, and I had the passion to bring my work alive within the context of the shooting when we were doing it, as we all did. And we are all still reaping the benefits of that all these years later, and thank you all for coming, because you allow us to believe that, in a sense, we're still alive. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually have a funny story. My daughter came home from school when she was 10 years old, we're talking about 16 years ago. And she said, "Daddy," and I said, "Yeah." She goes like, "You're famous." And I went like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes like, "Well, there's a kid in school and he has a book about Star Wars and you're in it as one of the people who played Boba Fett." And I said, "Who's Boba Fett?" So she shows me the picture, and then I went like, "Yeah, I remember that costume, but I played 5 more roles in the same movie." And she said, No. Boba Fett is the one that makes you famous." And I went like, "Okay." And so ever since then I was talking to a guy. I told him that story, and he used to have a comic book store. And he said to me, "You should go and do these Comic-Cons." And I said, "And then what?" He said, "You will enjoy it." I said, "Okay, you set it up and then I'll see if I enjoy it." And when I started doing it, I started enjoying it more and more and more. And memories came back from when we were making Return of the Jedi, because that's the only one that I worked on. And those memories, they every day I get a new one. I go like, "Oh yeah, I remember that happening." And every memory that I have is enjoyable. It's like fun. It was fun making that movie and working on it. And I was privileged, that somebody gave me that job. And the memories are great. Just one after the other. Good memories. No bad memories on that one.
I have a similar story because I did the Boba Fett and the Return of the Jedi, and as you can see, I wear glasses. And we were shooting. I was also one of the Bith Cantina band members in that same scene, which is a whole another story. Anyway, we were shooting this, and George decided last minute to put Boba Fett talking to the dancers, and the producer came up to me and asked me if we had a costume, and can I get it, and who could wear it, and I told him, and I said I could wear it. So I came out wearing the costume without the helmet. George decided to make a joke about me being Jabba's accountant, we did it, and it was done in over in 10 minutes or whatever. And then, of course, years later, the pictures, behind-the-scenes pictures, show up, and now all of a sudden, the picture of me without my helmet on is a meme. And and one of them that popped up was, on social media was that moment when you take off Boba Fett's helmet and it's your dad. And my son said, "That is my dad." So. But just similar to everyone else, I mean, the best memory is just the fun. There's thousands of stories probably each of us can tell that the individual stories, but it's the overall experience was great.
Let's jump. Next question. Thank you so much.
Hi. I'm actually a college student going into set design and film production. So,
Closer to the microphone.
Closer?
Oh,
Is that good?
Yeah, lift it up for her, yeah.
Oh,
yes, closer to the microphone, please.
okay, that works. Thank you.
Don't be nervous, we don't bite.
I'm always jittery. Anyways, so my question would be like, what is like some good advice for like someone, like I guess a college student going into film production or something?
So she's going into film production, and she wants to know what you guys have for advice.
Well, I'd jump into that because, how I got started in the entertainment industry is the advice I'd give to you. Be there. Take anything that's, any opportunity to go and do whatever it is, whether it's a follow spot on the Rocky Horror Show, which I did, right?
Yeah.
The stage show. Because you'll find, the work history of people in their 20s when they're getting started, unless they're very talented, and very lucky, is they get their jobs through being with, people in the industry, even if it's sweeping up the elephant dung, in the tent.
Yeah.
Because everybody has to do that at some point. And when you make friends with all these wonderful people, we all look after each other, and that's the thing to do. Don't be too proud to be, a walk-on extra. Don't be too proud to be a techie. There's what was happening in my day, and which is pretty much the folks that are all here, is there were two things that were important, which I'm glad they're gone. One was sort of a distinction between an artiste and a techie, and I was both. And so, if I was hanging around with my techie friends, and I had many techie friends, what are you doing with all those, artistes? Why do that's, do something serious, and vice versa. Why are you hanging out with techies? They don't do Shakespeare. Well, those are all wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, techies do Shakespeare, and they love it, and they do it very well. And the other, it was a closed shop. So, the unions were much more important. At least I'm speaking for England because I'm a union member of the British Actors Equity, not SAG. My understanding is that that's gone. So, the technology that you all have where you can use your iPhone to make a motion picture, everything's opened up. And so, to me, that reinforces the advice I'd give you from my experience 50 years ago, is just get into the system in any way, shape, or form, and it'll take you there. And it might be, well, I want to be an editor, a film editor, but it so happens that, the opportunities that came my way sort of led me, down the lane to lighting cameraman, You just don't know, but you're there.
It's good.
That's my advice.
The one thing I could add is that's great advice. That also learn as much about the other disciplines. Learn what everybody does.
Right.
Be nice to everybody. and work as a team, you know, because that's when it really clicks. You know, one of the best things is the connections that you make within the business, because then that person says, oh, I really like them, and they you know, bring those people over into a new you know, to their team, and so then you start building their reputation that way. So, but yeah, and just get out there and do it. Just do it.
Thanks, good question.
Thank you.
And both these things, if you just apply that to anything, you would be really well. Drop the pride, be nice. You're going to do well.
I will make one final point.
Oh, we got more.
If you happen to be, you know, offered a job as an extra in a film, the most important thing that you have to remember is don't ever find yourself so tired that you're going to sit on an electrician's road box. Woo, bad. Never sit on a technician's road box. Because you won't have a chair to sit on. Only actors with credits
You have to bring your own
have chairs, and but otherwise you're standing, and you're going to have to stand, because if you get on that road box, well, I don't know. I shudder to think what would happen to you.
And, have you already been on a film set or not yet?
I've done mostly theater right now. That's when I'm in theater yet. But I want to go into like higher film.
Okay, get you. Because on a film set, other than in theater, it's a lot of waiting.
Yeah.
A lot of waiting and waiting and waiting, and then maybe you do something. That's the way it works.
Unless you're in the art department, then you're always working.
Then you work, yes. Yeah.
My advice, whatever your passion is, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, follow your passion.
Yes.
Good advice, Hugh.
And it doesn't matter how talented you are, you need at least 50% luck. Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm someone who like grew up with the original trilogy, the prequels, and like growing up, I was very much like, oh, I've watched these movies over and over again. Now I want to know about the behind the scenes. So my question really is like, are you ever do what I do and just watching movies and start pointing out like, oh, I know I worked on this, did that. My girlfriend can attest. I do that all the time to her whenever I'm watching Star Wars or something. Just point out little facts here and there. But do you ever do that if you ever sit down and watch your own movies?
Yeah, when I like see the prequels mainly from a Star Wars perspective, I watch it and I go, oh yeah, I worked on that. You know, because I worked on each of those films for a year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. So, and we were doing so many different things, you know, little insert shots and this and that and everything, and then stuff that got cut out, you know. So, there's a lot of stuff I did that I can't remember I did unless I see the movie.
I have the same, actually. I have to look at my IMDb page to sort of going like, oh yeah, I did that one too.
Yeah, we got a call.
And that's what it was with Star Wars. When my daughter came home, I totally forgot about that one because it was a job I did so many years ago. And after that, I did other movies, and that was it. And then my daughter came home and tells me I'm famous, you know. Like,
I love that you forgot Star Wars.
I totally forgot that I did that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, Dickey's done, what, over 150 films?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been around.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Good question, man. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Mr. Watts. I had heard that you worked, with 2001, with Kubrick and all that. And I was kind of wondering, not just you, but all of your experiences with working with like classic Hollywood, like pre-Star Wars, and yeah, if you had any good stories to share about that.
I'm sorry.
Good stories about working with classic Hollywood, big producers, big directors, things like that.
Yeah, I did work with some classic Hollywood people who were stars when I worked with them. And, like Robert Mitchum, this kind of era people from the 30s, from the 40s. And I was sometimes very impressed with who I was working with because I'd seen them in a million movies and this, that, and the other. And suddenly here I am working with them. done on set. It was great because that's why I was in the movie business, to experience that kind of, I was going to say lust, but that's not the word, some kind of fulfillment from working with these kind of era stars. So yes, I adored my work. I couldn't have done it without adoring it, because it was hard work, very hard work, long days, and brilliant though, because we got to make history while making movies.
Let's jump for time. Thank you, and
Thank
so
you.
we can get these last three questions.
Okay, so I was just wondering if there was a particular practical effect that any of you worked on that you thought was particularly difficult.
A really difficult practical effect.
Sorry?
If you worked on a practical effect that you found really difficult at any time.
Well, for me, I don't know if you know the Land Strider in Dark Crystal. It's like 3 meters tall. And Jim Henson said, we need a creature to carry the hero and the heroine across the landscape. So Brian Froud, the designer, sat down with a pencil and he started to draw. And this thing with long legs, you know what I mean? And it became the Land Strider. It entailed basically working on stilts. So one of our group of performers, he had worked in the circus, and he could walk on stilts. So I got him to teach me to walk on stilts to do the Land Strider. And I had to work with a harness, and Bob Harmon, who did all the Superman flying work, was my wireman. And every morning I get onto these stilts and practice. And I found if he took 60% of my body weight, I actually could gallop. And I watched films of giraffes, how they ran, and I copied those movements. But it was something that had never been done before, because it's not humanly possible to be on arms and legs and actually do that without losing that amount of weight.
Wow.
And we tried all sorts of things. And there were some nasty falls sometimes, and thank goodness I had that wire. I thought, I don't think I would be here today.
Oh, Bob Harmon, he saved you, right?
Bob Harmon, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I would have never have guessed the Land Strider had. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And one day, it had sorry if I'm talking too much. It had a radio-controlled head, and we used to be between takes on these stands resting, and we do the rehearsals. Right, heads on, and I had a battery inside here because the eyes were radio-controlled, and they're just putting the head on, and smoke starts to come from inside the costume. Now this is a foam injection molding costume. If that had ignited, I would not be here now.
No.
They would have never got me out of there. I would have been barbecued.
Oh, God.
And that was frightening. That was, anyway, that happened.
2 questions left.
I had a model shop question. There was a technique I read about that was really fascinating, like in the prequels where actors were composited into miniature sets and environments. Was that a new technique at the time, or was that something that was already established?
No, they had done that with matte paintings in the original trilogy, and I actually years and years before, where even in King Kong, where they would film actors interacting and then project them into little screens on a glass, for instance, glass painting, and then that's what Ray Harryhausen did as well. I mean, when he interacted his stop motion creatures with people, they filmed the people and then they would project them onto a glass, and then he would animate his characters interacting with them. So it was an old technique. It just made it digitally. It makes it a lot easier. The cool thing about it was that at ILM, when they do that, everyone is in the film. Everyone that worked on the film is in the film somewhere. you know, I'm walking up the stairs in the pod race, and lots of like in Galaxy Quest when the ship crashes through the convention center, it's a lot of ILM people just running on a blue screen, and they composited them in, so makes it a little safer, I guess. But yeah, it's a lot easier just to do nowadays. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Miguel, do you have one question real quick, and then we got to go.
Use the force, Luke.
Our local mic tech here will come help you.
How did you guys like make all the creatures and the Jawas?
Oh, did you guys make Jawas at all?
I didn't hear.
So he was asking about creatures in Star Wars, and maybe specifically the Jawas. If you guys knew anything about how you made those, how you created those. I know that maybe not. I don't know. The Jawas were like anyone do the noise? They have a weird noise. They have little eyes and little robes. There you go. Those guys. Yes. They nailed it. I knew you would know it. Or just maybe your favorite we'll do one answer because we really got to go. Your favorite creation on Star Wars that you saw.
Thank you so much. Is that?
I think we're good. I think it's good. Sorry, Miguel. No good answer there. Hey, give it up for these guys.